Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Deals for Dentists podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. Through these podcast episodes, I'll be interviewing dental professionals and companies and aim to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And today we're joined by Tesha J. Cagle, RDH, PhDHP. Tesha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tesha, where are you zooming in from today?
I'm zooming in from the great state of New Jersey. Watch your mouth.
New Jersey. New Jersey. All right.
Yeah.
So Tesha is the Dental Diversity Diva, and she just mentioned it. She was born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey, and now with 10 years of clinical experience and a diversity trainer certification, she wants to ensure that the dental community is more inclusive and accepting of different cultures. Her goal is to reduce racial, gender, sexuality, age, and disability bias in the hiring process, minimize tensions and incidents of harassment in the office, and increase the patient's comfort and confidence in the provider's cultural awareness and sensitivity. As part of her unyielding efforts, she has had an article published in Dentistry IQ and has been asked to speak at the National Mobile Dental Conference and Dentistry's Got Talent in 2021. And we look forward to seeing what the future holds for the Dental Diversity Diva as she tries to make the world of dentistry a more inclusive one for both practitioners and patients. Awesome. Tesha, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful
So, Tesha,
introduction.
we first met at the, like you'd mentioned, Dentistry's Got Talent and the dental festivals, and such the pleasure of watching you speak and meeting you. And you actually were one of the speakers at my Get Stress Free Dentistry conference down in Florida. And we didn't have much time because the schedule changed, but I wanted to hear all about what it means to be a certified diversity professional.
Okay, so on a regular basis, I have 12 offices that I have made customized diversity plans for. Starts with a business plan to make it all make dollars and cents. That tends to get people a little bit more motivated as well. But every plan is customized to the office, to their needs. Usually, honestly, I'm brought in to put out fires rather than to expand. So I do offer my clients confidentiality because I feel like that should be standard practice, and I don't really need to build a name for myself off of their name. But everything that I do is to expand the practice, expand the net in which they bring in patients. But before doing that, we need to make sure that the office culture is receiving of all different cultures, all different backgrounds, and has a better understanding of the people that they serve and the people that they work with.
So you mentioned that most of your clients are they calling you when there's a problem, there's an issue with culture, and it's almost at the point where they need some help. Is that right?
Yes. Sometimes it's a bad Yelp review that would make an office manager or someone from the staff contact me or mention my name. And then I'm later contacted to change that. Honestly, there are a lot of issues that happen within the office that people are afraid to speak up about. And it can definitely change employee retention rates. So sometimes you'll see offices that have a high turnover rate, and you can't quite pinpoint what goes on. Sometimes it's uncomfortable shop talk that happens right on the floor where someone may not agree. Sometimes we see people that look like us and we assume that they have the same mindset as us, but you never know whether they have a nephew or uncle who's part of the LGBTQ plus community while you're making inappropriate jokes. You never know if they have a nephew that may be of mixed race or, so we make ourselves comfortable and sometimes too comfortable in the dental environment without taking into consideration not only who we're talking to, who may be within earshot, and whether it's being received as funny. Sometimes sexual harassment happens in the very same way. We just think we're amusing, and it does not go over well, but people are afraid to speak up. So that's also part of my diversity certification as well.
Now, Tesha, do you find that it's actually some staff members that are reaching out to you anonymously, or is it the practice owner?
I get different referrals. Usually, to be perfectly honest, if I gave you a percentage, usually it's the practice owner that is the larger part of the problem. Sometimes it is a dental office manager, but it's usually someone with a sense of power, a sense of entitlement. This is my space, this is my business, and I can say what I want. And the employees may love the office, but it's just that one thing where they felt uncomfortable in front of a patient, or a patient said that they felt uncomfortable with the banter. And so they, perhaps may suggest reaching out to me. So.
And you mentioned, decreasing turnover rate, increasing retention. I mean, that is so important, especially in this day and age with staffing troubles, because, like you had mentioned, everyone is coming from a different background, different set of, issues that's going on, before they get into the office. We all have different things going on. You really don't know what's going on in someone's home life, and we all have, from different cultures, and it can be such, and you said dollars and cents, getting, that increasing that retention rate and decreasing that turnover rate with staff is so important, because it can be so costly and so bad for the culture if you have a big turnover rate, correct?
Yes, yes. And you don't realize how often the patients notice, and it makes it uncomfortable for the new staff member that comes in, that is now having to deal with not only, well, what happened to the other girl, but sometimes it's what happened to the other girl, and the girl before that, and the girl before that, and the girl before that, because patients tend to be loyal, but that doesn't mean that they're blind. So if you have a cultural issue in your office, it would make sense to fix that rather than giving a bad impression to your patients, and they don't know where that's coming from, that you're constantly turning over or burning through employees. Having a cleaning, and I'm speaking from a hygienist, is a very personal thing. People only let certain people into their personal space. They're very selective. I liken it to having a barber or hairstylist. You just don't let everybody play in your hair. You just don't let everybody play in your mouth. So you have to have a certain comfort level with your provider, even if it is a hygienist or, your assistant that is caring for you. You want that whole environment to be as stable as possible. And that's really what the good feeling of coming to the dentist comes from.
Yeah, and I don't let just anyone touch this hair. This is a $16 haircut from Supercuts, so I'm very particular. I know people listening can't see, but I just got it today, and it's super fresh.
Yes, it's great. Wonderful.
Tesha, so when you were down in Florida with me, and you were one of the speakers at my event, I asked you about, a unique story, and you mentioned about, and I'd love to hear the story again. When you were 7, you tried to close your own diastema.
I tried, or I did, because
you did.
They can't
Impressive.
see me. They don't know. They
Yeah.
may think it was a failed project. But yes, at the age of 7, I was already I was the type of child that they would call grown, but you got in trouble for being grown back then. So I knew I did not like the space between my 8 and my 9. I didn't know they were 8 and 9 at that point, but yes. So between 8 and 9, I had, and it wasn't necessarily familial, but it was just a space when those big molars, those big incisors come in, and they're just sitting out there like, chiclets. I was not fond of that look. So at night, I tied my teeth together with dental floss every night. faithfully. And in the morning, I would cut it off with a small pair of scissors. So over, I would say about 6 months, the gap between my front two teeth closed. I don't have a perfect dentition. I never had braces. My parents laughed at me when I said I needed braces. One of three girls, and I probably had the most agreeable set of teeth. But yeah, so that's what I did, and it worked out. Thank goodness I didn't have any root resorption now that I, see my x-rays.
Did you ever forget and like come down the breakfast table and you still had the floss tied between your teeth?
It's not a comfortable feeling. To speak with, you can feel it with your tongue. So it would drive me crazy. I could never do it in the daytime. So that's why I did it overnight.
Yeah. Kids, if you're listening out there, don't
do that. Yes,
Tesha is a professional.
Do
don't do this on your own. So Tesha, what would you say is the most rewarding part about what you do?
The most rewarding part about what I do is when you actually see the lights go off. When you say something to someone and you frame it in a way that they've never thought about it. And a lot of times you have to put that person in their own uncomfortable spot, because sometimes when they're saying these things or they're going about life in this certain way, they're not seeing it from another's perspective. But we all have our things that would make us uncomfortable. So sometimes it's, it's digging, finding out almost how to push buttons, which isn't a good gift, but yeah, I've been married. I know how to do that. And then when you say something to them in a pretty pleasant way, but how would you feel if, usually starts with that. And you can see, that gut-wrenching type of hurt, and then the light go off like, oh, I understand. Now I know what I've been doing to the people around me. Now I know how I've been approaching patients wrong, as if I've already had them figured out from the moment they walk into the waiting room. Now, now I know. And then from then, growing from that point as a building block, it's also very rewarding because you find less resistance. It's just like that patient who comes in with a nasty attitude and they're like, I hate the dentist, and then by the time their appointment is finished, they're like, oh, it was such a wonderful experience. I always got a kick out of turning people around in that way. So it's like that, but it's just in a different way.
And now is all of your training virtual now, or do you still go in live?
Generally, if it's somewhere local, I will go in for the first meeting and give someone an overall impression of who I am. I feel like some of who I am may be lost in solely virtual. So if it is at all possible, I will go in because I'm a person that kind of picks up on vibes as well. And I feel like some of that cannot be relayed virtually. So if it is possible, I like to go in and have real conversations with real people face to face. That is still my preference of communication.
And would you say, is that one of the hardest parts about what you do, is that those face-to-face conversations, or what would you say is the hardest part about what you do?
The hardest part is probably not being able to always be there. I do try to put a team in place, somewhat of a diversity overseer, I guess you would call them, to kind of what's one of the team that really understands what we're going for, where we're headed. And they kind of keep track of whether we're still moving in the right direction. And then we'll have checkpoints to make sure we're still moving in the right direction. But because I can't be everywhere every day, I still feel a sense of responsibility when things fall through the cracks. So I am a very mommying spirit. I'm not a helicopter mom, but I do like to have my hands on things that I want to see succeed. So not being able to be completely hands-on for every office every day is probably the hardest part, especially when things kind of revert back to the old ways, and then we have to start over again from scratch.
And now, why haven't we heard more about diversity professionals like yourself? Is this a new field? Is this growing? What do you see in the works for 2022 regarding this?
So it's not new. That's the sad part. It's new to dentistry, and it should not be, you know. So I was on a different interview, and someone asked me, "What do I hope to see?" And I hope to see a time where I'm not a novelty, where it's not so cool. It's almost standard that you have someone like me in place in your office. What happened is we are healthcare providers, right? So in a hospital, you would have to have some type of cultural competency training, some type of training so you can properly serve the people that you're serving. But guess what? The same people that end up in the ER are the same people that end up in our chairs. So we need to make sure that we don't let our personal bias get in the way of their treatment, because we know the connection between oral and systemic and how that can harm them overall if we're not giving them the proper treatment, the proper care, or the proper approach, because the improper approach can keep the patient from coming back. But that's still our responsibility, and we need to take ownership of that. But because a lot of doctors are, you know, single businessmen, and they don't feel the need or responsibility to the public that they serve, this type of, you know, profession has not been tapped into within dentistry. And then also because a lot of office managers have no HR training. This is a certification that's commonly ventured into from an HR position, but our HR staff is usually our office manager. Sometimes the office manager, the only type of training they have is that they're married to the dentist, so they know how, you know, the finances work for the practice and those things, but they may not necessarily have the people skills required for that position, or they have no requirement for any type of continuing education of any sort. They just know what they know, think what they think, and move about things in that way. Not saying that that's a bad thing. I've worked for practice owners who had their wives in the position of an office manager. It's not a bad thing, but we also need to want more. We need to seek out more training so we can continue to develop as a practice and as a profession.
So would you say is that one of your biggest hurdles, is the lack of awareness or lack of training in the field?
Yes, it is a very big hurdle because people don't always see the value in what I'm offering. And so they kind of look at it as, you know, oh, that's unnecessary. I'm doing just fine. But if you could be doing better, if you could be serving more people more effectively, why not? You know, we look at all of these things, the newest technology, but at the end of the day, we're treating human beings. Why don't we further our education in that? You know, because you could have all the gadgets in the world, and I promise you the patient will have no idea when you tell them about the newest toy you just bought. They don't know how that benefits them. What they walk away with is how they felt like they were treated in that experience. So to me, that
so
is
true.
the most important.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, you could buy the, you know, $100,000 CT scan or laser or a milling machine, and it could just sit there and collect dust if you're not treating people well and you're not getting patients to come back in your office.
Exactly.
So Tesha, I wanted to wrap up with, what advice would you give young dental professionals or just entrepreneurs in general?
I would say that the road less traveled is not an easy one. And there are definitely highs and lows in that journey. But once you set out to do something, you have to go full steam ahead, because the world will try to break you down, but you have to follow your purpose. And if you venture out on something knowing your purpose never changes. So you need to just forge ahead, and look forward to the better days, which will definitely be on the horizon. And also network. I mean, look for people who believe in your goal. Keep them around you, you know, because they will be your shield for the naysayers.
Awesome. Tesha, how do we get in touch with you?
Oh, well, you can find me on my website, dentaldiversitydiva.com. I'm also pretty popular on Facebook because I'm 42, so I can't Snapchat or any of those things, but I am on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, all under the name Dental Diversity Diva. And you can also find me on LinkedIn under my name, Tesha Cagle, and Dental Diversity Diva as well.
Awesome, Tesha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
As always, I hope everyone finds this episode interesting and valuable. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the Deals for Dentists podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our weekly newsletter so you don't miss any of our upcoming shows.